Welcome to the Relevance Report, where we explore the relevant stories that are shaping our world today. I'm Joanna Clark, your host this week. On today's show, an economics professor gives insight into the events and decisions that led to the U.S.-Canada trade war.
War has its casualties, but if you don't stand up for yourself, then you cannot hope of anything good coming your way in the long run.
Next, we chat with the owner of a small retail store about how she's weathering the uncertain economic situation.
I think the biggest thing that has impacted us so far is the stress of uncertainty.
Finally, we talk to everyday Canadians to hear what they're saying about the impact of tariffs on their own lives.
The only thing I've really noticed so far is that vapes are hella expensive.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. The day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
When President Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian goods, Canada reacted with retaliatory tariffs. The result of these decisions escalated into a trade war that is impacting the economy and consumers on both sides of the border. Tricia Solis sat with economics professor Dr. Constantine Colinescu to discuss the contributing factors leading to this growing conflict.
Tensions are escalating between Canada and its closest trading partner and longtime ally, the United States. On February 1st, newly re-elected President Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico. His goal, to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. and to pressure both countries to tighten their borders in an effort to curb the flow of migrants and drugs, particularly fentanyl, into the country. Canada will be hit hard, facing a 25% tariff on most exports to the U.S., including critical sectors like steel and aluminum. With tariffs now being imposed by both countries, the situation has escalated into what many are calling a trade war. To understand the effects of the U.S.-Canada trade war, I sat down with Dr. Constantine Colinescu, an economics professor at MacEwan University, who offered insight into the roots and potential consequences of the escalating U.S.-Canada trade dispute. Imposing tariffs on imports isn't new for President Trump. In fact, it's a continuation on what he started during his first presidential term in 2017 when he targeted China with tariffs on most of its goods. He threatened additional tariffs on Canada and Mexico as leverage to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, an effort that ultimately resulted in the creation of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA. From the beginning, President Trump's America First trade policy used tariffs as a way to bring back manufacturing jobs to the U.S. and assert economic independence. However, the belief that tariffs bring back jobs is one with a long and complicated history. In fact, Dr. Colinescu points out it didn't even start with President Trump.
This idea of bringing back jobs to the United States was actually started by Joe Biden when he was advised that some critical components of the production of armament in the United States actually have been produced abroad.
As for bringing back manufacturing jobs to the U.S., well, the truth is, no country can produce everything it needs on its own. Not efficiently, anyway. That's where trade comes in. By opening up to global markets, countries can import goods from places that are better equipped to produce them. Think about it this way. Why try to grow bananas in Canada when other countries can do them more efficiently, affordably, and in greater quantities? When countries specialize in what they do best and trade with others, everyone wins. Lowering tariffs and encouraging trade leads to what's called economies of scale, which basically means that the more you produce, the cheaper and more efficient it becomes. And in the end, that means lower prices, more innovation, and better options for consumers around the world. But when countries start pulling back from trade by raising tariffs or shutting down access to foreign markets, they risk moving toward what economists call autarky, a term for a closed economy. Autarky tends to have the opposite effect: higher prices, reduced innovation, and slower economic growth.
If we go back to autarky, then we go back to inefficiency. There is not enough demand to invest in a more productive process of production. There is not enough demand for investing in research and development, for innovation, for anything. There's just not enough people that would buy the product if trade is not allowed.
While these tariffs are often framed as protecting domestic industries, it's consumers who will be impacted the most. Higher tariffs mean higher costs for imported goods, and those costs are almost always passed down the supply chain to consumers through increased prices on goods. Dr. Koliniscu points out that we're already starting to see those effects take hold.
It's not quite industries that are going to be affected, but consumers. I'm more concerned about Edmontonian consumers because we see that prices have already started to increase, although tariffs are not yet at their highest level, but in February inflation started to pick up again. Now we see the core inflation at 2.1. It's been year to year in February, 2.1%. It used to be a downward trend before that.
He adds that this rise in inflation isn't just temporary, and as long as tariffs remain in place, consumers should prepare for a challenging road ahead.
We already see inflation picking up both in United States and in Canada, and we should expect a recession. Actually, this is what major banks in Canada forecast, that we should expect a slowdown in economic growth below 2%, which means that many people are going to lose their job.
In response to the imposed tariffs, Canada has announced retaliatory measures, starting with a 25% tariff on $30 billion worth of American goods. That figure is expected to rise to $155 billion if the U.S. tariffs remain in place.
I see retaliatory tariffs as having a more like a long-run purpose rather than short-run.
Retaliatory tariffs aren't designed to deliver instant results. As Dr. Koliniscu explains, their purpose is strategic and long-term, meant to signal to President Trump that Canada will not passively accept unfair trade practices. In other words, it's about sending a message, even if it comes with economic pain.
War has its casualties, but if you don't stand up for yourself, then you cannot hope of anything good coming your way in the long run.
Tariffs and trade barriers may seem drastic today, but for thousands of years they were the norm. It's taken decades of international cooperation to shift away from protectionism and move toward a more open global trading system.
What Donald Trump is doing now has been the norm for thousands of years. This trade philosophy that a country should import as little as possible and export as much as possible has even a name. It's called mercantilism. And it took the world a lot of work since the creation of worldwide organization that was GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which now is the World Trade Organization, to actually get countries together and agree of lowering trade barriers. It is very likely that this action of opening up trade was one of the important factors of growth for the past 100 years.
The move toward open trade didn't just reshape the global markets. It has also driven economic growth and played a key role in improving the quality of life around the world.
So this is why we are here now, the highest standard of living ever in human history. One of the important factors was lowering trade barriers, because this allows for making production more efficient, making each country produce goods and services that they are best at producing them.
President Trump's decision to impose high tariffs and shift away from open trade toward protectionism risks undoing the very progress that has contributed to rising global living standards.
Before, when tariffs and trade barriers were the norm, standard of living in all countries were much lower. So I would say that actually what President Trump is doing now is taking humankind back 200 years.
Across the country, grocery stores are encouraging shoppers to buy Canadian by adding signs on products produced in Canada. According to Dr. Koliniscu, this move reflects more than just a marketing strategy. It's a quiet form of resistance that allows consumers and businesses to show solidarity with the Canadian government's retaliatory response. While these actions may seem small in the context of a global trade dispute, Dr. Koliniscu believes they still matter.
I think it's very effective because it makes us feel good, thinking that, as small as each individual is in this big powers war, there is still something we can do. Like it's the same thing with switching off the light in your room when you get out. It just doesn't really matter much. But unfortunately, this, except for writing a letter to Mr. Donald Trump, is the most we can do.
Despite all the uncertainty, Dr. Koloniski remains hopeful that this rift between Canada and the US won't last forever.
Of course, there will be suffering. Many people here and there would lose their jobs. But otherwise, I would expect that in 4 years from now, everybody would be overly joyed to retake our traditional friendly relations.
Canadian customer sentiment is changing in the face of the trade war. With an elbows-up mentality, shoppers are actively adjusting their shopping habits to seek out Canadian businesses and Canadian products. In response, retail stores large and small are adding displays and labeling to highlight their own commitment to Canada. But they're starting to feel the effects of the uncertain economic situation. Here's my report on how one small business is coping. As trade tensions between Canada and the US evolve, many Canadians are adjusting their shopping habits, becoming more mindful of where their products come from. For small businesses, this shift presents both challenges and tough decisions. Erin Dykstra and her husband Jordan own Wild Birds Unlimited, a specialty hobby shop in Edmonton, Alberta. Like many small business owners, they are adapting to changing consumer sentiment and the unpredictable retail landscape.
I think the biggest thing that has impacted us so far is the stress of uncertainty. Businesses really do need to become specialists in forecasting. So you're always forecasting sales revenues, consumer trends, customer wants, expenses. That has become increasingly difficult. Directly, the US tariffs or the US import tariffs don't affect us other than threatening that, that general downturn in the economy that nobody wants. But what does affect us is the US import tariffs on Chinese goods. That have been imported by U.S. distributors. So if the product lands in the U.S. before being shipped here to Canada, those tariffs will definitely affect the pricing of any of those imported goods. And that proposed second round of Canadian retaliatory tariffs, those could potentially impact some imported commodities. And one of those on the list is birdseed. But having said that, the political climate seems to change every day or two. And so it's impossible to predict what may happen. That may never affect us, and it may, and we'll just have to take that as it comes, I guess.
Erin says that while some products they sell do come from the US, they are intentionally chosen because they are the best.
We've always sourced those U.S. products for a reason, and that's because they are of the highest quality, which you may not get when you're ordering from overseas. Typically, that's the reason that our customers shop with us, because our products are the best in the industry, and they're looking for that quality and not necessarily just the cheapest price. Consumer sentiment is changing so quickly, which is interesting, and it's hard to keep up with for retailers because the products on shelves could potentially have been ordered months in advance. So depending where they're being ordered from and the minimum order quantities, stores might be holding enough inventory to last them for 2 to 6 months, and that's a huge challenge when people are suddenly changing their mind about what they want.
You mentioned the changing sentiment with shoppers. Do you highlight Canadian products in your stores, and did you do that before the tariffs came out, or are you just starting to do that now?
Yes, that's something that we have always done. We're proud of being able to source a lot of our gift items and even some of the handmade, locally made birdhouses and feeders. We try to highlight that they're Canadian. We haven't really been bandwagon jumpers and putting flags all over the store, which maybe we should be. It's hard to know what the right thing to do is. But yeah, I think we always have done that, so that won't be changing.
Despite the situation, Erin remains pragmatic. While the trade war has made business more challenging now, she keeps focused on what she has always seen as most important, serving the birding community of Edmonton.
Sometimes it does feel a bit like a helpless situation. You chat with customers about where different products come from, and you offer a Canadian-made version of what they're looking for if they desire to purchase that. But what we've really decided to focus on is ensuring that our margins are correct, our cash flow is healthy, and that our expenses are kept as low as possible. So those are the things that we can control. I wish I could see into the future. All I know is that it seems to be one challenge after another for the last while. It's COVID, supply chain issues, labor shortages, postal strikes, you name it. Businesses have had to deal with so many things being thrown at them. But the flip side as a business owner is that you're forced to come up with creative solutions to address these trials. And there's always so much to learn and so many ways to grow as an operational manager and a leader. And in some ways, I think business owners and entrepreneurs do what they do because they find that a bit exciting. A challenge is fun, although I am very tired. We're definitely hoping for a return to normalcy as quickly as possible.
Even while facing an uncertain future, Erin's resilience and dedication to her community are clear. Small business owners like her continue to navigate the unpredictable landscape with creativity and determination. For now, it's about staying flexible, supporting local suppliers wherever possible, and providing the best products and services to their customers, as always. Now, even though we've heard from experts in businesses so far, we also wanted to get a gauge on the general public's opinion on the tariff situation. We toured downtown Edmonton and talked to a handful of people off the street. The idea was to get a generalized public opinion, but we also wanted to determine whether age and generational differences play a role in the public's attitude toward tariffs. We found that younger generations focus more on immediate impacts, such as groceries, while older generations tend to focus on large purchases and social impacts. Here's what they had to say.
I'm scared about the cost of living going up for like myself included, especially when it comes to like food and basic necessities.
The only thing I've really noticed so far is that vapes are hella expensive. But right now, that's all I got.
I'm still waiting to see how it all unfolds. I'm not 100% sure yet at this time, but I feel the fear of like the social anxiety of people talking about it, but I don't know yet how it impacts me.
Kathleen's comment about anxiety creates anxiety and insecurity, the feeling of the impact that's got on the economy.
It's out the hand now.
Yeah,
They don't care about the people anymore.
I've actually been thinking about what big purchases I might want to make that are going to be affected by the tariffs. I was putting off getting a new e-bike, and I actually had an e-bike from American company that I really liked, but this time I got one that was specifically designed and assembled in Canada, and I made that purchase a little earlier than I expected, just being fearful of potential aluminum or steel prices going up.
Yeah. I've definitely found it's made me more aware of like shopping like from Canadian used or Canadian produced products, and I have kind of like started to notice it like with my groceries and stuff. I think that's the main thing right now.
One of the things I've been doing to sort of offset the increased price of groceries is look for produce on a more local scale or supporting businesses that are smaller, because a lot of time the produce that they're bringing in is from somewhere close by. So tariffs don't really have an impact on their price. Like I just went grocery shopping yesterday and probably got enough produce for most of the week for like $45.
To be honest, with school, it's a word that's thrown around a lot, and I know I don't have as much of an understanding on it as I should, but it has definitely increased a lot of stress in my everyday life and a lot of the conversations with my mom and just what's going to happen. And all I know right now is I just need to do a lot of saving and speak up for what I know I believe in and do the best I can with what I can right now in exam season.
It takes me a lot longer to shop because I look at where everything comes from, and I won't buy anything that comes from the US. It's mostly made me angry, and it's also inspired me that Canada has really pulled together to fight this as a country, and I think it's increased the feeling of patriotism in the country. And I hope that we remember that when it comes time for our election in a few weeks.
Sorry, I work in the apparel industry, and lots of stuff gets shipped and sewn all over US and Mexico and all over NAFTA basically, and obviously heavily affected by tariffs, so not the best thing I've ever seen.
I haven't noticed too much of a personal impact for myself as far as tariffs, except in the news, a lot of panic and people kind of being angsty as far as the implications of tariffs, and I'm sure that down the line tariffs will be a huge factor as far as mitigating business in Edmonton and Canada overall.
I mean, I'm more so laughing at Trump and how he is indirectly leading to the decline of the American empire.
Thanks for joining us for the Relevance Report. This episode was produced and edited by Sach Petrov, Trisha Solis, Joanna Clark, Penelope Harapusco, and Alvin Nitimbiane. The show's supervising producer is Sheena Rossiter. This episode was produced as part of the BCSC 397 Digital News Publication course in the winter 2025 semester. The course is part of the Bachelor of Communication Studies program in the Department of Communication at MacEwan University. The show was edited and produced out of the MacEwan Media Production Studio. Our theme music is called Buzzing by Kaylee Lambert, and additional music includes Wild Bird by Corbin Bako-Riki. And I'm Joanna Clark, your host for this episode. This podcast was recorded on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 9, 10, and 11 within the historical North Saskatchewan River Territory. Don't forget to subscribe to the Relevance Report on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review and rating. It really helps people find the show. Please join us again next week when we report the relevant stories that are shaping our world.